here we are. I just got a droplet of rain into my eyeball. I'm looking into a camera. I'm pretending that I'm talking, I guess, to Gary. It's worked sometimes, I think, as a kind of audience. I forget sometimes too, and I just get carried away, and I think I'm just talking. But Gary, I was thinking it would be fun to do some videos where I was kind of documenting where I am currently in some of my nutritional kind of viewpoints. And I think it's like a blend of standing on the shoulders of giants in physiology and biology and nutrition research, and then experimentation, what's worked for me based on things I've learned. I've come to a lot of different viewpoints over the last 20 years on what nutrition means to be nutritionally solid. And I hope what I'm currently doing is where I feel the most solid. I mean, that's the point, I think. I hope in 10 years I'm saying something that puts a much different and more meaningful to me at that time spin on it than what I'm saying right now in 2020 or 2020. And so I hope I'm the idea that knowledge is provisional applies to nutrition. It's provisional. I only know what I know until I know more, and until I learn more, and it changes, and it's context based. What's good for me at 8 o'clock in the morning on a otherwise quiescent morning is going to be different than what's important for me to consider nutritionally and environmentally at 3 p.m. On a busy day where I haven't eaten for 6 hours. And so these things matter. There's no like rule book, but there are a lot of ideas that I'm incorporating right now, and I think it'd be fun to do like a video or a longer snippet, series of videos that kind of talk about that. So I guess it's just fun. It'll be fun to look at this in 5-10 years or 5-10 months even, and see what I was saying. So I'm just gonna kind of from the hip talk about in the rain, in this blip of whatever this is, talk about some of the things that we're doing or some of the things I'm thinking about. I'm going for a calcium to phosphate ratio that's in favor of calcium, and I'm eating way less meat currently. I actually feel like this has made a huge impact on my stress levels being way down, and also like my oral health. I don't know if I'm making this up, but it certainly seems like my oral health is improving. I'm healing. Not that it was horrible, but I feel like I'm really healing after several years of not really considering that increasing my intake of sugar and sweet foods might also put my teeth at risk of developing or decaying and developing like cavities and stuff. And so now a big thing is I still am eating sugar and sweets as a big part of my nutrition and energy and my fuel aspects of nutrition, but I'm putting I'm like rinsing my mouth after I eat sugar or sweet foods or drink something sweet as a way to get the protein films or whatever. I might be just making this up, but like getting some of the things that might get stuck to the teeth and start to cause decay, swish with the water and spit it out and get it out of there. So I mentioned the calcium to phosphate ratio. So lots of dairy products. What I perceive to be the best dairy I can find from local farms where the animals where I'm getting this dairy, maybe goats or cows, are allowed to graze and eat grass mostly, and there's kind of like this idea that what that animal goes through as far as a life is important in terms of the food that comes from that animal and then becomes a part of me. We're all so intimately related, and it seems to be such a relationship. And that if that animal isn't well taken care of and doesn't have a good life, that's going to impact me. That animal is becoming a part of me. The murdering of that animal in terms of meat, right? I say I haven't been eating much meat, but I still eat meat. And when I do, I like to at least think, or hopefully I know enough to know that meat is coming from a place where that animal has lived a good life. So yeah, lots of good dairy products. mostly in the form of Parmigiano Reggiano, and lots of ice cream lately. I've been actually increasing my intake, my consumption of ice cream, especially at night, as a way to reduce stress levels, with some, you know, good salt, good sugar, a little bit of protein, some healthy, what I think healthy fats. And again, like a lot of the things I think now are like way different than what I thought 10 years ago. But with the help of learning more, at least I think more about the whole picture of things and how things are interrelated and how physiology actually works, thanks to, I think, like I said, standing on the shoulders of giants like people like Ray Peat, and some of the work that he's done, some of the work of independent researcher friends who I know who have done a lot to dig up a lot of this stuff. Ray is connecting so many dots on so many levels, and seems to be having not only a changing picture, but a very interconnected picture of a holistic sense of what might be going on. And it's a helpful starting point, I think, and then experimenting from there. And then, so, you know, in general, I'm wanting to keep my fat as the lowest macronutrient right now. And I mentioned ice cream. It's pretty fatty compared to a lot of the things that I'm going for. But as an overall day-to-day picture, I'm looking for probably 1.5 or 2 to 1 sugars to proteins, and then from proteins to fats, 2 to 1 proteins to fats. So for example, like if a day includes 300 grams of carbohydrates, mostly, hopefully, lately in the forms of simple sugars, and I'm talking like fruits, particularly tropical fruits. I'm talking honey, I'm talking maple syrup, we're talking like sweet, ripe, fresh orange juice, and things like that. And then so if it's like 300 grams of sugars, for example, 2 to 1 would be like 100 to 150. That'd be 100 would be 3 to 1 grams of protein, and then maybe 50 grams of fat or 60 grams of fat. And in terms of fat, I'm trying to stay as far the hell away as I can from especially non-natural sources of polyunsaturated fat. Polyunsaturated fat seems to be, and I've been experimenting with this for like 6 years now, where I'm really staying away from any polyunsaturated fats. You know, of course we get some naturally in like eggs and liver and various things. There's a little tiny bit in coconut oil, which I think is a good fat in terms of cooking fats, or oils. Butter, grass-fed butter, and coconut oil are the main ones that I think are safe and healthy and fun to cook with and have a high cook point. What else? So salt, not bad. We need salt. Salt's actually intimately related in keeping our stress levels low, as sugar is. And so I'm not talking like white sugar. Although it's interesting because I 5 or 6 years ago, when I was coming to this new look on nutrition and then started to experiment, it was probably about 6 years ago now. I was actually afraid of sugar prior to that point, and I'd spent like 6 or 8 years really in this low carb or no carb experimentation, because I got all into some of those fad things at the very beginning of when these things, I think these things are still happening right now, but I was like at the very beginning when these things started to become popular or even just talked about, I went for them, I experimented, and I got ripped. I lost a lot of body fat, but my overall health actually started to deteriorate in so many ways, and I can get into that in another little snippet, but I think it's interesting. Anyway, I was actually afraid of sugar. So when I started experimenting with sugar, I started to realize slowly, gradually, and then there came a point where I actually became a huge fan of sugar, and just that's actually would be my ideal thing to eat is sugar. And what I mean by that, like I said before, is like maple syrup, honey, fruit, fresh fruit, particularly ripe tropical fruit, and then just simply not afraid of white sugar even, and that's can be an important supplement in keeping stress levels down. And that's backwards. And when you look at like what a lot of nutritionists, and like if you look at like Twitter feeds on nutrition and Instagram, profiles, which a lot of them are just like, still on that kind of no sugar bandwagon. And physiologically speaking, like sugar, our cells, and like like the cells of our biggest, most powerful, most energy requiring organ, the brain. Like, we need it. We need sugar, and if our body doesn't get it, it's gonna make it. It's gonna go through a process of gluconeogenesis, as far as I can tell, which is gonna make sugar from protein from our muscle stores, and eat ourselves basically to make that sugar that it needs. So it's gonna get it one way or another. So I've learned to want to supply it so that my body doesn't eat itself. At least that's where I'm currently at. Again, these are just some of my perspectives as I currently see them. And I'm trying to summarize this, but it's actually just becoming this ramble, which is okay, because again, I'm shooting from the hip, and I'm just kind of sharing some of these thoughts. So I guess if the question was to me, like, what are the main things I'm looking for in my nutritional and environmental like atmosphere right now, it's and what would I prioritize? I guess it would be to keep polyunsaturated fat intake as low as possible, except for that in naturally occurring things like eggs, which I want to consume because there's some powerful nutrients in eggs. It's keeping polyunsaturated fats low, and I'm talking like 4 grams or less a day, maybe 6, because if I eat more eggs, I'm getting a little bit more naturally occurring. So favor saturated fats to polyunsaturated fats for sure, and really try to cut out polyunsaturated fats. It would be that I'm eating at least the same amount of grams of sugar as I am protein each day. I'm keeping protein up for thyroid function, and I might supplement this video with like another like little sections after each of these things I say, where I do like voice recordings, and I actually have dug up and do a little write-up on like why I'm actually doing this, from what I've gleaned from research, and that might be fun. Other than that, like, someone who I think is just insanely, almost like a just like people who seem to know more about how the body functions than I do, and I take what they say, and I take it, and I acknowledge it, I listen to it, and then maybe I experiment and dabble, and over the course of 6 years, like some little experiments have turned into big experiments that are really a big part of our life, because they've I think brought some pretty far-reaching benefits. So, okay, back to like what I would like consider big parts of the atmosphere as far as nutrition and environment. What do I consider? So keeping polyunsaturated fats low, eating plenty of sugar, like I said in the forums that I mentioned. Starch not so much, because there's this thing called endotoxin, which I want to actually keep low. Or not be an endotoxic load or endotoxic burden in my body. So, you know, and so I've at least experimentally found that when I eat more starchy foods or starchy carbs, like potatoes even, and corn, and like sourdough bread, these are things I will eat. But push comes to shove, or if I'm like really looking for ideal, like my digestion seems to work better when I'm favoring simple sugars and fruits and you know, honey and things like that as a significant part of the sugar aspect of it. So proteins, eating what I think are quality proteins, shellfish. Let's go to like the powerhouse foods. I consider powerhouse foods right now to be like eggs, liver, beef liver, because of the dynamic punch of nutrients that might be in these things. Oysters, so oysters, liver, and eggs, really powerhouse foods. Good sources of dairy, like grass-fed cow milk and goat milk. Not as much, because I don't think I've gotten to the point where I can just slam like gallons of milk. I just don't think my body responds really well to that, but maybe a cup a day. I eat Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. It seems to be hold the label of king of cheeses quite well to me. It seems to be easily digestible cheese, packed with nutrients. Of course, the calcium to phosphate calcium to phosphorus ratio seems to be ideal. In other words, favoring calcium. And so these are big staples to me. What else? Yeah, salt, liberal with salt, no big deal. And then just like getting sunlight every day. What do I supplement with right now? in terms of on top of like, you know, just eating the foods that I think are going to make me feel good and digest easily. I think that for endotoxic load, keeping endotoxin down, I think it's like eating foods that are easily digestible and like foods that I think are going to allow me to have regular pooping. I think I mentioned this I think I will mention this in the writing that precedes today's video snippet, that I sometimes doubt myself when I start talking about what I'm doing as far as nutrition and stuff, even though it's like, I consider myself quite thoughtful and then confident in perceptive, yes, and then thoughtful and then confident in my actions pertaining to the choices that I make as far as nutrition goes, and as far as some of the daily habits and stuff that I do, and whether I'm, you know, pretending that I'm involved in this decision-making process or it's just coming from wherever and I'm just kind of like, you know, it's just some intense, complex reflex, which I think ultimately maybe that's what it is. But at least I can pretend that I'm like conscious and making these moves. Sometimes I think I doubt what I'm doing or where I'm at, because I know that it's going to change. I just know it because it has changed over the past 5, 10, 20, you know, 30 years, what I know. And so, but that being said, like I think it's still, the moves I'm making are personally relevant. They're meaningful in the sense that, you know, I think I'm doing what I think is right. And that's got to be enough at this point, right? I can still know enough to separate what I think is shit from shinola, as Terrence McKenna once said, and it also doesn't preclude me from knowing that I can't know everything, and I don't know everything, and I'm trying to know more, and that I will always be in a place where I can learn more. So those two things, I guess, can coexist. And I think I sometimes need to remind myself that. I'm doing like a handful or subsequent experiments, bottle after bottle after bottle of a new mouthwash creation, and each one has been, you know, pretty much consistent with the previous one in terms of what I'm putting in it. But that's another thing that that's a part of the repertoire right now. I feel solid about that right now. I think it's awesome. The whole family uses that. And so what else? So I'm thinking out loud here, but what else is a part of this nutritional landscape currently? And this is 2020. It's December. These are things I'm thinking about. I try to eat regular intervals throughout the day. I'm trying to stay away from the fasting, you know, place. I call them break fastes or break fastes. That I'm trying to, you know, break a fast 4 or 5 or 6 times a day. And eat before bed and really just stay out of that stress state, because I think ultimately fasting seems to be a stressed state, and the stress state creates a lot of physiological, you know, destruction and really leads to, I think, chronic degeneration if done too often. I think, like Ray's pointed this out, that it seems like a lot of the benefits they've seen in studies from like fasting or even intermittent fasting is really because by not eating, you're also not eating shit. You're not eating toxic shit. You're not eating iron-rich foods that can be very destructive if built up over time. Toxic iron overload seems to be a real thing as far as I can understand it. And you're not eating like PUFA, lots of polyunsaturated fats, which seem to be really destructive in the cellular sense, in terms of cell function and healthy metabolism, healthy thyroid function. So when you're not eating anything, you're also not eating shit, which is probably why people or probably why fasting studies or fasting research shows benefit. But the ideal place would be to eat regularly and foods that are actually enriching, actually helping the thyroid metabolism, and actually leading to not just a longer life, but a longer life that is rich and full of energy. So I think that would be the difference to me. What else? sleeping a lot, and I mean putting the electronics away. I've talked about the bear box before, but putting the electronics away is a big thing right now. And if I am on the computer, because I am developing, it seems like I'm in the process of developing a habit of writing every day now, and it's that I put the blue blockers on to keep the blue light from getting into my eyes and messing with circadian rhythms and things like that. So I'm just trying to think out loud here. What else is a part of it? And again, I think this might be fun for me to look back on later and kind of just cogitate and compare. And if nothing else, it might be fun to just look back on this and be like, oh, those are some things that he was thinking about, that I was thinking about. There's so much. So like in a video like this where I'm shooting from the hip, I'm gonna miss a ton of things, I'm sure. And I'm wondering if I'm covering some of the big things. But I'm drinking a lot of coffee. I really am not drinking much coffee after about noon. I probably drink 2 or 3 or 4 cups in the morning, between probably when I wake up and noon or 1, and then I just haven't been drinking it in the afternoon. I drink a ton of tonic water, which is basically carbonated water, sugar, and quinine. I think quinine is a special thing. It seems to be involved in some anti-serotonin properties, and seems to be implicated positively in physiology sense. I am dabbling with different supplements. Aspirin I'm taking somewhat regularly. I was taking it every single day for a couple years. I'm still basically in that boat, but I haven't been taking it every day. I take it kind of when I feel like I'm under a lot of stress, or I feel like I might be getting sick. I will definitely take aspirin, and I'm looking for the excipient free, the one that's just starch and salicylic acid, which ironically or weirdly can be found in my experience from like a dollar store or the grocery outlets have them for super affordable, and they seem to be the best made, highest quality aspirin supplements. Vitamin K2, vitamin D3, I've been supplementing with those in the morning. I've been supplementing with thyroid. I've been experimenting newly with thyroid. That's a new thing in spring of 2020, and really through the summer and a little bit now here in the winter. I've been supplementing with taurine again a little bit lately. That's a somewhat, every now and again I'll get into trying out the taurine. It seems like the last couple years, and I've been doing that again